Daniel Grant stared out the window of his small apartment, watching raindrops race down the glass. His reflection showed a man in his mid-40s with dark hair touched by gray at the temples and eyes that had seen too much. 3 years had passed since his wife died, and the pain had dulled but never left. The soft beep of his communication device broke the silence. He knew who it was before answering. "Grant," he said simply. "The transport leaves tomorrow at 600, said the voice of Director Alan Collins. "Earth needs you on this one." Daniel sighed. "I told you I'm done with all that." "This isn't like your old work," Collins replied. "The Galactic Consortium specifically asked for you. They need a human diplomat for peace talks between the Varg and the Elysians. You're the perfect choice." "I'm no diplomat," Daniel said. "You're ex-special forces with 7 languages and a psychology degree. Plus, you understand death better than most." Collins paused. "Sorry, that was insensitive." Daniel almost laughed. If Collins only knew the truth, that Daniel understood death because he was death itself. An ancient cosmic force walking in human form, the last of a bloodline engineered thousands of years ago to house this universal power. "The consortium doesn't send requests lightly," Collins continued. "This could prevent a war that would kill billions." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. His human side wanted to refuse, to stay in the quiet life he'd built after losing his wife. But the other part of him, the ancient entity that balanced life in the universe, knew he couldn't ignore this call. "Fine," he said finally. "Send me the details." The next morning, Daniel stood at the boarding dock of the U.S. Horizon. He carried only one bag. He never needed much. His human form could be maintained with minimal care, and the power inside him required nothing material. Captain Samantha Powell met him at the airlock. She was tall with short blonde hair and the confident posture of someone used to command. "Mr. Grant, welcome aboard," she said, extending her hand. "I've been briefed on your mission. We'll reach Nexus 9 in 8 days if all goes well." Daniel shook her hand, sensing her life force, strong and vibrant, with many years ahead unless something interfered. He could feel this about all living beings, a side effect of his true nature. "Thank you, Captain. I hope for a quiet journey." "My first officer will show you to your quarters," Powell said. "We're honored to transport Earth's representative to such important negotiations." As First Officer Ben Miller led him through the ship's corridors, Daniel observed the crew. 37 humans, each with their own timeline, their own moment when they would eventually meet him in his true form. He had walked among humans for so long that he had grown to care for them, to marvel at how they lived despite knowing death awaited. In his quarters, Daniel unpacked his few belongings and reviewed the mission files. The dispute between the warlike Varg Dominion and the peaceful Elysian Collective had been brewing for decades over control of Nexus 9, a resource-rich planet at their borders. Neither side knew what Daniel truly was. To them, he was just a human diplomat sent to mediate their conflict. Even Earth's government didn't know they had appointed death as their representative. Daniel felt a strange sensation as the ship entered faster than light travel, something pulling at his awareness, a whisper of danger ahead. In his thousands of years walking in human form, he had learned to trust these feelings. "Something is waiting for us," he whispered to himself as he looked out at the streaking stars. "And I don't think it's peace." He closed the mission files and prepared himself. The cosmic force within him stirred, sensing that soon it might be needed. Daniel hoped he was wrong, but death always knew when it would be called upon. 3 days into the journey, Daniel sat in the ship's dining area, watching the crew. He enjoyed observing humans going about their lives, finding meaning in the time they had. It was something he had come to respect over his long existence. Captain Powell slid into the seat across from him. "Mr. Grant, I hope you're finding everything comfortable." "Very," Daniel said with a small smile. "Your crew runs a tight ship." Powell nodded. "Best in the fleet." "Aye." The ship's alarm cut her off. Red lights flashed throughout the room. "Captain to the bridge." A voice called over the speakers. Powell stood quickly. "Excuse me." Daniel followed her to the bridge, that feeling of danger now stronger than ever. On the main screen, a small space station appeared. It was damaged, with parts of its outer hull torn open to the void. "We picked up their distress signal 15 minutes ago," Officer Miller explained. "No response to our hails." "Life signs?" Powell asked. "Unclear," the sensor officer replied. "There's some kind of interference." Daniel stepped forward. "Captain, I suggest we continue our course to Nexus 9. Powell turned to him with surprise. "There could be survivors." "There aren't," Daniel said quietly. He could feel it, the absence of life. And something else, a trap. "With all due respect, Mr. Grant, we can't ignore a distress call," Powell said firmly. Daniel nodded. He understood duty. He had worn human form long enough to know some rules couldn't be broken, even when instinct warned against them. "Of course, but proceed with caution." The U.S. horizon moved closer to the damaged station. Daniel stood silently, the cosmic force within him stirring. Death always knew when it would be needed on a large scale. "Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy readings," the sensor officer suddenly called out. There. 3 ships appear out of nowhere, their cloaking technology deactivating as they surrounded the horizon. Their design was angular and threatening, covered in weapon ports that began to glow with energy. "Varg warships," Officer Miller shouted. "Battle stations. Evasive maneuvers," Powell ordered. "Shields up." It was too late. The first blast hit before the shields fully activated. The bridge shook violently, throwing several crew members to the floor. "They knew we were coming," Daniel said calmly, holding onto a railing. "They set this trap specifically for us." Powell looked at him sharply. "How would they know about your diplomatic mission?" "Someone doesn't want these peace talks to happen," Daniel replied. The ship rocked with another hit. Alarms blared as reports of damage came in from all sections. "Weapons are offline. Engines at 30%, Miller called out. "Send a distress signal to Earth," Powell ordered. "Communications are jammed," the communications officer responded. Daniel watched as the Varg ships moved into position, herding the damaged horizon like wolves around wounded prey. He could have revealed his true nature then, could have reached out with the power of death itself to end this attack. But that would expose what he was to humans who weren't ready for such knowledge. The largest Varg ship moved alongside them, and Daniel felt the distinctive vibration of a boarding tube connecting to their hull. "They're boarding us," Powell said grimly, drawing her sidearm. "All security teams to breach points. We will not surrender this ship." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Captain, your crew doesn't need to die today. We're trained to defend." "The Varg aren't here for your ship," Daniel interrupted. "They're here for me, the Diplomat." Powell's eyes widened with understanding. "You're saying we should surrender you. That's not happening." The ship shuddered as the Varg cut through the outer doors. Daniel could hear weapons fire in the distance, the first defenders falling to the alien borders. "I'm not afraid of what comes next," Daniel said, his eyes momentarily showing their true depth, ancient and endless as the void between stars. The bridge doors exploded inward, and armored Varg soldiers poured through, their weapons aimed at the crew. A large Varg with commander insignia stepped forward, his reptilian eyes fixed on Daniel. "The human diplomat," he growled in accented English. "You will come with us." Daniel stepped forward with his hands raised. "I surrender myself to your custody, on condition that this ship and crew are spared." The Varg commander laughed. "You are in no position to make conditions, human." As Daniel was seized by 2 Varg soldiers, he gave Captain Powell one last look. There was a promise in his eyes, though she couldn't understand it yet. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The cell on the Varg warship was cold and dark. Daniel sat on a metal bench, his wrists bound with energy cuffs that would have been impossible for a normal human to break. He had been there for hours, listening to the distant sounds of the ship and feeling the slight vibration that told him they were traveling at high speed. The door slid open with a harsh metallic sound. General Krell, the Varg commander Daniel had met on the horizon, stepped in. Behind him stood 2 guards and a human woman with olive skin and dark hair pulled back tightly. "Diplomat," Krell said, making the title sound like an insult. "It is time we talked." Daniel looked up calmly. What happened to the Horizon's crew? Krell's scaled face pulled into what might have been a smile. Some live. Some do not. Their fate depends on how useful you prove to be. Daniel nodded slowly. He could sense the truth. Many of the crew were already gone, their life forces extinguished. He felt each passing, as he always did. Death missed nothing. "What do you want to know?" Daniel asked. "Earth's position on the Nexus 9 dispute, what technologies you plan to share with the Elysians, your military capabilities." Krell stepped closer. "I will know everything before we reach the homeworld." "I'll tell you what I can," Daniel said. Krell laughed. "You misunderstand. You will tell me everything." He turned to the guards. "Prepare him." What followed was meant to break him. The Varg had refined torture into an art form over centuries of war. They applied pain with scientific precision, damaging but not killing. Daniel endured it silently, his body repairing itself faster than they could notice. Hours later, the human woman returned alone. She carried medical supplies and checked that the surveillance cameras were off before approaching. "I'm Lisa Cortez," she whispered, "xenoanthropologist. I was captured 6 months ago studying a border world." Daniel watched her tend to wounds that were already healing beneath his torn shirt. Her gasp told him she had noticed. "Your injuries, they're healing on their own," she said, her eyes wide. "Yes," Daniel replied simply. "What are you?" Lisa's voice trembled slightly. Daniel considered the question. In thousands of years walking among humans, few had discovered his true nature. Those who did rarely reacted well. "I am something very old," he said finally. "Something that exists in all worlds, in all times." Lisa's hands froze in the act of applying a bandage. "I don't understand." "I am what comes for all living things eventually," Daniel said softly. "I've walked in human form so long that I've become partly human myself. I feel attachment, compassion, even love." "You're saying you're death." Lisa's voice was barely audible. Daniel nodded. "One aspect of it, yes." Lisa stepped back, but to her credit, she didn't run. "Why are you here? Like this?" "I was sent as a diplomat, because that's what humans believe me to be. But perhaps there's a deeper reason." Daniel looked at his healing hands. "The universe has its own balance. The Varg have disrupted it, taking too many lives too soon." The ship suddenly shuddered, the lights flickering. An announcement in the Varg language came over the speakers. "We're arriving at the Varg homeworld," Lisa translated. "They plan to make an example of you. A public execution to show the galaxy how they deal with human interference." Daniel stood slowly. "Lisa, listen carefully. What happens next isn't meant for human eyes. When the time comes, find somewhere safe to hide." "I can help you escape," she insisted. "I've learned their security systems." "No." Daniel's eyes changed for a moment, becoming deeper than the space between stars. "I'm not the one who needs to escape." Lisa's breath caught. For the first time, she truly saw what stood before her, not just a man, but something infinite and inevitable wearing the shape of a man. "Tomorrow, they will try to execute me," Daniel said, his voice normal again, "and they will learn why that was a mistake." The door slid open, and guards entered to take Daniel away. As they led him out, Lisa stood frozen, understanding at last what the Varg had unwittingly brought aboard their ship. They had captured a diplomat, not knowing he was death itself. The great hall of victories on the Varg homeworld was filled with thousands of warriors. They had come from across their empire to witness the execution of the human diplomat, a symbolic rejection of peace talks and a clear message to Earth. The hall was massive, with high ceilings and walls covered in trophies from countless battles. At the center was a raised platform where executions were performed. Above this, on a throne made from the bones of defeated enemies, sat the Supreme Dominator, ruler of all Varg. Daniel was brought in wearing heavy chains. He walked calmly between his guards, his face showing no fear. The Varg warriors pounded their chest plates as he passed, the sound echoing like thunder through the hall. General Krell stood on the platform, holding a ceremonial blade that had been in his family for generations. The curved metal gleamed under the harsh lights. Hidden among the crowd, disguised in a servant's robes, Lisa Cortez watched. She had ignored Daniel's warning, determined to witness what would happen. Her heart raced as she saw him approach the execution platform. "Beings of the mighty Varg Dominion," Krell announced, his voice amplified throughout the hall. "Today we show the galaxy that humans cannot hide behind words and diplomacy. Their weakness ends here." The crowd roared its approval. Daniel was forced to his knees before Krell. The general grabbed his hair, pulling his head back to expose his neck. "Any final words, human?" Krell demanded. For a moment, Daniel remained silent. Then he raised his eyes, and everyone in the hall felt a sudden chill. "I am not here as Earth's representative," Daniel said, his voice somehow reaching every corner of the vast space without being raised. "I am here because you have disrupted the cosmic balance." The chains binding his wrists suddenly crumbled into dust. Daniel stood slowly, his form unchanged yet somehow different, as if the reality around him was bending to make room for something larger than his human shape could contain. "All life must eventually meet me," he continued, his eyes now bottomless and dark as the space between stars. "But you have taken too many, too soon." The Supreme Dominator rose from his throne. "Kill him now," he commanded. Guards rushed forward, but stopped a few steps from Daniel. They couldn't seem to move closer, as if some invisible force held them back. "I am Death," Daniel stated simply, "and you have attacked a diplomat." His human appearance began to shift. He didn't grow larger or change shape exactly, but somehow became more, as if layers of reality were peeling back to reveal what had always been there beneath the human disguise. Darkness flowed from him, not like smoke or shadow, but like the absence of everything. Where it touched, Varg warriors simply ceased to exist. They didn't die screaming or fighting. They met their end with strange, silent acceptance, as if recognizing an old friend. General Krell raised his ancestral blade and charged. The weapon passed through Daniel's form without effect. Daniel reached out and touched Krell's forehead with one finger. The general froze, his eyes widening in horror. He wasn't experiencing death. At least not his own. Instead, he was feeling the death of every being he had ever killed. Every pain, every fear, every unfinished life. Throughout the hall, panic spread. Warriors who had never retreated from battle now fled in terror. The Supreme Dominator abandoned his throne, pushing through his own guards to escape. Lisa watched, somehow protected from the power being unleashed. She saw Daniel, or the entity now fully revealed, move through the hall with terrible purpose. Not killing in anger or revenge, but simply restoring the balance that had been disrupted. "So this is death," she whispered to herself. "Not cruel, not kind, just inevitable." And as the darkness spread through the hall, she finally understood why he had walked among humans disguised. Some truths were too vast, too fundamental to be seen in their pure form. The Great Hall of Victories had fallen silent. Where thousands of Varg warriors had stood moments before, now only empty armor lay scattered across the floor. The Supreme Dominator had fled, but there was nowhere in the universe he could hide. Daniel moved through the hall, his form sometimes human, sometimes something else, a darkness that was not evil, but simply the end of all things. He touched only those who had been directly involved in the attack on the U.S. horizon. The others he let flee. General Krell remained on his knees, tears streaming down his scaled face. The experience of feeling every death he had caused had broken something fundamental inside him. "Why?" Krell asked, his voice hoarse. "Why not simply kill me like the others?" Daniel looked down at him. His appearance had settled somewhat, though his eyes still contained the darkness of endless space. "Because you need to carry a message," Daniel said. "Death comes for all eventually, but violence and cruelty only hasten the meeting. Your people have forgotten this." In the shadows of a side entrance, Lisa watched. She should have been terrified, but instead felt a strange calm. She had studied hundreds of alien cultures and their beliefs about death. Now she was witnessing the truth behind those myths. Daniel turned, seeming to sense her presence. "You can come out now, Lisa. It's over." She stepped forward cautiously, walking past the empty armor that had contained living beings just minutes before. "You didn't kill them all," she observed. "No, only those responsible for attacking the horizon." Daniel's form now looked completely human again. Even death must maintain balance. A commotion at the main entrance drew their attention. A group of Varg entered, not warriors, but civilians wearing the robes of the Council of Elders. They approached cautiously, led by an ancient Varg whose scales had faded to pale gray with age. "We felt the disturbance," the old Varg said. "The warriors spoke of a human who is not human." Daniel faced them calmly. "I am the diplomat sent to negotiate peace between your people and the Elysians." The elder Varg bowed deeply. "We know what you are. There are stories, ancient ones, about the cosmic forces that maintain universal balance. We did not know one walked in physical form." "Few do," Daniel replied. "And it should remain that way." "What happens now?" Lisa asked, looking around at the empty armor. "Now there will be peace," Daniel said, "because now they understand the true cost of war." The elder Varg nodded. "The Supreme Dominator's militaristic rule ends today. The Council will govern until proper elections can be held." He hesitated. "Will you take us all?" Daniel shook his head. "I am not here to end your species, only to restore balance. Death comes when it should come, not before." News of what had happened in the Great Hall spread quickly throughout the Varg Empire. Some accounts spoke of darkness that consumed warriors. Others told of a figure both human and infinite that moved with terrible purpose. All agreed on one thing: the human diplomat was something more than human. As Daniel and Lisa left the hall, they found the city outside in chaos. Warriors were abandoning their posts. Civilian Varg were emerging from their homes, looking up at the sky as if seeing it for the first time. "They've lived under military rule for so long," Lisa explained. "This is the first taste of freedom for many of them." Daniel watched the scene with ancient eyes. Freedom always comes with responsibility. They will need guidance. A message arrived from the Elysian Collective, accepting the invitation to peace talks. The Varg Council, now led by the elder who had confronted Daniel, agreed to meet on neutral ground. "Will you still act as diplomat?" Lisa asked as they walked toward the spaceport. Daniel nodded. "That is why I was sent. But now both sides will negotiate in good faith." "Because they're afraid of you." "Not afraid," Daniel corrected. "Aware. There is a difference." As they boarded a transport vessel, Daniel looked back at the Varg city. For thousands of years, he had walked among humans, watching them live and die. Now, for the first time, he had revealed his true nature to other beings. The universe would never be quite the same again. 3 days later, Daniel stood on the observation deck of a neutral station orbiting Nexus 9. The disputed planet hung below, its blue-green surface swirled with white clouds. At last, the peace talks that had been his original mission were about to begin. "Nervous?" Lisa asked, joining him at the viewport. She had been officially recognized as an advisor due to her knowledge of both species. Daniel smiled slightly. "Death doesn't get nervous." "But the human part of you might," she said. He nodded. "After thousands of years, the line between what I am and who I am has blurred. The station had been prepared for the historic meeting. The main conference room contained 3 sections, one for the Varg delegation, one for the Elysians, and one for Earth representatives who had arrived after receiving news of the incidents on the Varg homeworld. The Earth delegation was led by Admiral John Blackwood, a stern man with gray hair and a perpetual frown. He had pulled Daniel aside upon arrival. "Grant, what the hell happened out there?" he demanded. "We're getting wild stories about you turning into some kind of entity." The situation required unconventional diplomacy. Daniel replied simply. Blackwood studied his face. "You know, I've seen your service record. Nothing in it suggested you were anything but human." "We all have our secrets, Admiral." The Elysian delegation arrived first. Unlike the reptilian Varg, the Elysians were tall, graceful beings with pale blue skin and large, thoughtful eyes. They moved with fluid grace, their robes flowing around them like water. Their leader, Elder Selene, approached Daniel directly. Her eyes, capable of seeing more than physical reality, widened slightly. "The stories are true," she said in a musical voice. "You are one of the Eternal Ones." Daniel inclined his head. "I prefer Daniel Grant these days." "We have legends about beings like you," Selene continued. "Cosmic constants that maintain balance. We did not know you walked among the younger races." "I have walked among humans so long I have become partly human myself," Daniel explained. "I feel their joy, their pain, their love." The Varg delegation entered next, led by the elder Daniel had met in the Great Hall. With them came General Krell, now quiet and subdued. His experience had changed him profoundly. As the negotiations began, Daniel observed how differently both sides approached the table. Before his revelation, the Varg would have been aggressive, demanding, threatening. Now they were subdued, respectful, willing to compromise. The Elysians, who had always been peaceful, seemed to understand what Daniel was on a deeper level. They treated him with reverence, but not fear. Admiral Blackwood leaned toward Daniel during a break. "Whatever you did, it worked. I've never seen the Varg willing to give up territory." "Sometimes the universe needs to remind everyone of the natural order," Daniel replied. "Even the most warlike species can understand death when it speaks to them directly." The negotiations proceeded smoothly. The Varg agreed to withdraw from contested regions of Nexus 9. The Elysians offered to share their advanced medical technology. Both sides committed to a joint governing council for the planet. As Daniel watched them sign the preliminary agreements, he felt a sense of satisfaction that was entirely human. His cosmic nature knew only balance, but his human side could appreciate peace. Lisa touched his arm gently. "You've changed galactic history today." "I revealed myself," Daniel corrected. "That changes everything." Later, as the delegates celebrated the successful first day of negotiations, Elder Selene sought out Daniel again. "There is something you should know," she said quietly. "Our seers have had visions. Something approaches from beyond the known galaxy. Something even you may struggle to face." Daniel nodded slowly. "I felt it too. A disturbance in the cosmic balance." "Will you help us when it comes?" Selene asked. Daniel looked around at the humans, Varg, and Elysians mingling peacefully. In thousands of years, he had never interfered so directly in mortal affairs. Yet now, having revealed himself, he had set a new path. "Yes," he said simply. "When it comes, I will be here." 6 months after the Nexus 9 agreement was signed, Daniel Grant stood on the porch of his small home in the Colorado mountains. Earth looked the same as when he had left, but the galaxy had changed forever. The morning air was crisp, and the rising sun painted the distant peaks with gold. Daniel breathed deeply, appreciating these simple human pleasures, as he had learned to do over thousands of years. A car approached on the dirt road, bringing the first visitor he'd had since returning to Earth. Lisa Cortez stepped out, now wearing the uniform of the newly established Cosmic Phenomena Research Division at the Global Space Agency. "Nice place," she said, joining him on the porch. Very isolated. I've always preferred quiet, Daniel replied. After so many centuries, it becomes valuable. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching an eagle soar over the valley below. The Varg have changed, Lisa finally said. Their warrior traditions now include philosophical teachings about life's impermanence. Their military academy has added courses on diplomatic solutions. Daniel nodded. And the Elysians. They've become more open about their telepathic abilities. They're helping establish communication standards between all species in the consortium. Lisa turned to face him. Everyone keeps asking about you, the human diplomat who is not human. And what do you tell them? That you prefer your privacy. She smiled. The universe will have to live with some mystery. News reports from across the galaxy had tried to explain what happened in the Great Hall of Victories. Some called it a weapon test gone wrong. Others spoke of mass hallucinations. A few religious groups claimed it was divine intervention. Only a handful of individuals knew the truth, that death walked among the living, wearing human form. Will you continue as a diplomat? Lisa asked. Earth's government has offered you any position you want. They don't know what you are, but they know you somehow averted a war. Daniel watched the sunrise colors fade into the blue of day. For now, yes, this human form has many years left, and I've grown attached to it, to this world, to people. He didn't tell her what he sensed approaching, a darkness beyond the edge of known space, moving slowly but steadily toward inhabited worlds, something that even death might struggle to confront. Humanity will soon take its place among the older races of the universe, he said instead. They'll need guides who understand both the human experience and the cosmic order. Admiral Blackwood had offered to make Daniel the head of Earth's diplomatic corps, with the power to choose which missions to accept. Daniel had agreed, knowing it would give him freedom to prepare for what was coming. The Elysian seers say trouble is coming, Lisa said, as if reading his thoughts. Something beyond our understanding. Daniel nodded. There are forces in the universe even older than me. Not all of them are benevolent. Is that why you revealed yourself after hiding for thousands of years? To prepare us? Perhaps. Daniel looked at her thoughtfully. Or perhaps after so long walking alone, I needed someone to see me for what I am. Lisa reached out hesitantly, then placed her hand over his. The touch of a living being, warm and real, anchored him to his human side. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together, she said. Daniel felt the ancient force within him stir, momentarily at peace. Throughout his long existence, he had been many things to humans. A terror, a mystery, an inevitable end. But never before had he been a companion, a protector, a friend. Together, he agreed, knowing that even death was stronger when it did not walk alone. As the new day brightened over the mountains, Daniel Grant, diplomat, human, and death itself, began planning for the battles that lay ahead. The galaxy now watched Earth with new understanding and respect. Humans were no longer just another emerging spacefaring species. They were the people death walked among, and that made them the most dangerous and most important species of all.